Everybody. It's a pleasure to get back to this webinar, this webinar series in biotechnology and agrobioscience, organized with the School of Agriculture, organized by the School of Agriculture of the University Mohammed VI Polytechnic in Morocco, organized also in collaboration with OCP Africa and RUFORUM. So really, it's a pleasure to get back and to animate again this new webinar. It's also a double pleasure because today I'm hosting a colleague, Professor Mohammed BOULIF from the University Mohammed VI Polytechnic in Morocco. And he will touch on a very interesting project and also topic, which is around wheat IDM for Africa. I will let him afterward elaborate on what is this mysterious name, IDM. But before starting this webinar, I welcome you all, and I thank you for your massive participation as usual. We are all here delighted to offer you this webinar by one of our well-known professors in the world of agriculture, Professor Mohammed BOULIF. So before I start, I really would like to discuss with Professor Mohammed BOULIF some of the issues related to agriculture in Africa. So Professor Mohammed, what is, in your opinion, the most challenging aspects today for agriculture in Africa?
Thank you, Professor Yasri, for this kind introduction. And yes, Africa is known for its diversity of production systems and food systems. And obviously that relates to the soils and climates that it harbors. And quite obviously, we cannot ignore it. The main problem for Africa and for the developing world as a whole is the population growth. There is a growing demand for food from now to 2050. And that is a very important point, which brings us to underline and underscore the importance of agriculture in our daily lives, because we practically eat three, for the luckier people than us, who can eat 3 meals a day.
Yes, yeah, that's true. So yeah. Now, how do you think education in general can help in in this tackling these challenges?
Yeah, well, exactly. It has been 10,000 years before Christ that mankind has discovered agriculture in the Middle East, and before that, man was hunter and gatherer. And he has learned by experience, just going into the forest and nature, gathering fruits and seeds and hunting animals to survive. It took 10,000 years. And let's say maybe around 1 century and a half, agriculture was of a great importance. And it took quite a flight in the 20th century, when agricultural sciences have been rationalized and being taught in different schools of the world, especially in the more advanced countries of Europe and North America. And that's how the Green Revolution has been born, to teach the farmers how to grow their plants, their crops, their food, and how to go about their old profession and noble profession, which is that of the farmer. So that's how man has evolved from 10,000 years ago as just almost a wild animal, but with his instinct of food seeker, and he looked for his fruit and grain, whatever he could find, to the farmer who is sophisticated, who has learned how to use fertilizers, how to till the land, how to sow, how to harvest, and even how to conserve the food products after harvest, and maybe complete those skills with marketing skills, how to get all his produce to the market and get some money. Because we should not forget, agriculture has, in my eyes, two main functions. The first vital function is that to produce food for people on this earth. And the second function is that to create some trade, commerce, because that's how the farmer, they get some income to cope with their familial expenses, like schooling of children, healthcare, and all the other needs. And also, well, let's say the third function of distribution. When you have wealthy farmers or wealthy country who produce enough and can distribute and share with others, that is an excellent thing in agriculture. That makes of agriculture an activity that we cannot avoid. We live by agriculture because we need food. We live by agriculture because we need to exchange. We need people to trade with each other, potatoes, wheat, barley, whatever, meat. And it only suffices to hear the information on the radios or TV. I still listen to the radio. I'm an old timer. The trade wars between China and America, it's all about food, and between those who have and those who have not. So that's the importance of agriculture.
Thank you, Professor Mohammed BOULIF, for this really explanation on how today agriculture is impacting our world and how education is impacting the training and the knowledge transfer and transformation in Africa. So yeah, so if you have just joined us, we haven't started yet with Professor Mohammed BOULIF. I was discussing with the professor, my speaker, my invitee to that we get a sense of how this agriculture today is evolving and how education can impact the dissemination of knowledge in agriculture in Africa. So Professor Mohammed BOULIF will be elaborating in one very interesting topic again, on wheat IDM for Africa. So this webinar and all the webinars that will be upcoming are developed in a sort of solidarity for Africa movement. And this is our contribution to this movement, contribution of the School of Agriculture of the University Mohammed VI Polytechnic in Morocco. And all this webinar, we really would like to thank our partners, OCP Africa and RUFORUM, for supporting this action, supporting this, the dissemination of knowledge in agriculture for Africa. So before handing to Professor BOULIF, it's my pleasure to introduce him. So although his CV is really very large and very elaborated, and he got a lot of experience in agriculture in general and education, I will just try to summarize it as much as I can. So Professor Mohammed BOULIF earned his engineering diploma in agronomy in 1975 from the Hassan II Institute of Agronomy and Veterinary Science in Rabat in Morocco. He completed his PhD degree in plant pathology in '86 at the University of Minnesota in the United States. Professor Mohammed started his career as a faculty member of the National School of Agriculture in Meknes, where he has taught several plant protection disciplines for more than 40 years. That's really a lot, and supervised few dozens of students' research projects and theses. He also served respectively as Secretary General and Director of the ENA, which is the agriculture school in Morocco, for a total of 16 years. His main concern during the past decade was to extend agricultural best practices for integrated crop production with a focus on integrated pest management through farmer field school. This is really one of the key domain where Professor Mohammed is really innovating, who has really done a lot, not only in terms of educating students, but also educating farmers. Currently, Professor Mohammed is a colleague of mine. He's contracted by University Mohammed VI Polytechnic as a faculty member at the School of Agriculture, Fertilization and Environmental Sciences, ESAFE. So again, it's a real pleasure to host you, Professor Mohammed BOULIF, for this webinar. And I would like to hand it to you now to talk about the wheat IDM for Africa. Thank you, Mohammed, for accepting my invitation.
Thank you, Professor Aziz, again for this excellent presentation. And let's go. So I'd like to I would like to talk about this strange title, Wheat IDM for Africa. In fact, IDM stands for Integrated Disease Management in Wheat for Africa. So basically, I would like to review within this hour or 40 minutes, almost the essence of what I have learned during my past 30 to 40 years of working with the students and with the farmers in the field. So let's start. Let's start by talking about the crops that feed the world. And that is something that you should keep in mind. Every world citizen should keep in mind. Wheat is the #1 crop that feeds the world population, alongside with maize, rice, and in the third place, barley. Of course, you will find, depending on references, which is first and second, depending on the date of publications. But to me, this is what crops of the world are, and wheat is the #1 crop that feeds the world. And when we talk about feeding the world, of course, we think about the world population, which has increased from 1750 to less than 1 billion and is expected to grow to 9 billion almost by 2050. And when you look at these curves, we note that the developed world has its population well under control. However, in the developing countries, the population is exploding, see? And when you think about the resources that are available to this population in the developing countries, one can understand the problems of famine, migration, conflicts, tribal conflicts, and that's, to me, that's where the problem is. It's a problem of food, a problem of well-being and livelihood of the people in the developing world. So if you add to that, this image, the slide depicts in a caricatural way, but that's the reality. The world is divided between those who have and those who have not. And we have about 1.4 billion people who are overnourished, more than enough, and 1 billion of undernourished people, both quantitatively and qualitatively. The nutrition that they receive is deficient in certain micronutrients, for example. So we are before this necessity and obligation that Africa needs to produce more food for itself. And it is a necessity by any means. And this is this becomes a mission of all the African, I would say all Africans, citizens, government, schools, universities, to do whatever they can to reach this objective. When talking about the food in Africa, we basically are faced with about a number of food systems depending on the crops grown in the different regions. Let me point out that North Africa has a wheat-based system, wheat and horticulture, the wheat and the vegetables and the fruits. And in other countries, we have food systems based on sorghum, millet, cowpea, and livestock. And in this part of Africa, we have another food system based on maize, soybean, dairy, and so on and so forth. So there is a great necessity for Africa to build specific trainings and research capacities to improve the performance of the continent in terms of producing food for its population. And here's a map that depicts in a schematically the different food systems. Again, the wheat-based food system in North Africa, not only in Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and we have the maize-based food system over here in East Africa. Of course, you have other wheat systems, the rice-based food system in Asia. There is some of it in Africa. The barley is also important. It's also an important crop in North Africa. And the crops, of course, are determined by the nature of soils and climate of every region. And that is the reason why agricultural sciences and agricultural training should be made in the spots, in the ecological areas. We must train agricultural scientists and agricultural extension agents under those conditions. It's nice to get training in Europe and then America, but then you have to be able to apply them in your ecosystem where you will be working. As far as wheat in Morocco is concerned, we must recall that about 43% of the arable land is devoted to cereals in Morocco. So when you fly above Morocco, you will see a huge cereal fields, huge cereal field. That's what it is. 2 million hectares of bread wheat and maybe a little bit more than 1 million of durum wheat, plus from 2 to 2.5 million hectares of barley. You see, our country is a big producer of cereals, but still we will see that production is not enough. Aside from the cereal production, we have plantations that cover about 7% of the arable land, namely fruits, olives, almonds, etc. 3% of pulses, food legumes. The pulses are food legumes, faba bean, peas, lentils, chickpea, and others maybe. 2% of forage or feed that will go to animals, and 2% to vegetables. Now take a look at this. 43% to feed the people, and 2% of the land cropped to vegetables that will allow the country to export vegetables to Europe and to other countries, and that allow the country to take money, to make money and make currency. And that's the heart of the matter. In every country, we must have staple crops to allow some nutrition for the people, and other cash crops that will allow the country to draw some currency to its reserve, to its treasury, so that it can purchase other goods from other countries or the international market, if you will. Aside from these land areas that are cropped to either annual crops or to trees, there is still some fallow, an area that is not cropped at all, land put to rest in order to be to receive either cereals or other crops the next season. So let me just introduce to you the main cereals that we are talking about. On the left hand here, we have the durum wheat. You have the spike before maturity and the spike after maturity. And durum wheat is mainly distinguished by these black awns or white awns, the barbs or the awns. The botanical name is awns, but they resemble a barb, well, which is correct. And the durum wheat is distinguished by high protein content. That's what makes it suitable for pasta, for spaghetti, and other good quality food. While bread wheat, which does not have the barb, it's not for that reason. It is a spike that is more cylindrical, that does not have barbs or awns. These are spikes before maturity, and these are spikes after maturity. And it is called bread wheat because it is used to make bread. Why? Because it has less protein content and other qualities that makes it fit only for bread making. And in third place, we have the barley, another cereal that is suited for less favorable land, let's say arid and semi-arid land. And we distinguish two types of barley: the 6-row barleys, you can count 6 rows here, and the 2-row barley over here. Okay, and it has been known, and you must have known that these 2-row barleys are used in the malting industry. Well, they are used in the malting industry because of the uniformity of seed, because there is not a big difference between the 6-row barley and the 2-row barley. The protein content is about the same, and the malting industry does not like barley with high protein content. That's the reason why they choose their varieties, and among most of those varieties are 2-row barleys. And the fourth type of cereal, which has made its appearance in Morocco in the 1980s, which is a good cereal for arid land, that is the triticale. The triticale is a interspecific cross between triticum and cicale, between the wheat and the rye. And it has both characteristics of the rye and the wheat, and it produces this grain similar to wheat, to durum wheat grain. And some people say, well, it's not just as good as the durum wheat or bread wheat for bread. But in the 80s and 90s, we have managed in Meknes, we have done some experiment with triticale and made some bread of triticale, and it was just good. You only have to know how to make it, to bake it, and you have to present it to the people, to the consumer. So what is the importance of cereals in the Moroccan economy? Before the Green Morocco Plan, which was started in 2008, there was the status at that time for coverage of food needs in Morocco, and the Green Morocco Plan projected objectives by the year 2020. So you must understand that the Green Morocco Plan is ending now, because that's the year where it was supposed to end. So if we look at the table, we see that we are sufficient in fruits and vegetables already in 2008, and that's how Morocco was exporting vegetables and fruits. And if something is working, please do not fix it. just keep it going. And that's the reason why the Green Morocco Plan wanted this to maintain this coverage of 100%. And thanks to God, we have fruits and vegetables in our markets. With regard to meat, we have the Green Morocco Plan stated that we were self-sufficient even in 2008, and we want to keep it that way. Well, that's good. Do we produce enough meat for everyone? There is no. These figures, they only reflect the food customs of the Moroccans. Moroccans are not big eat meaters except in certain localities. So, and I like that, because too much eating is not good for your health. So we are close. We have something going on very good in our food system. We rely on food, legumes and wheat, and maybe we have some meat. And thanks to God, the chicken industry has helped fill this gap of the red meat. With regard to the milk industry, already in 2008, Morocco was covering about 90% of its need, and the target was 100%. And this is not very difficult for Morocco to reach, because Morocco has deployed huge efforts in improving the dairy livestock in Morocco. So we have now cows that produce enough milk. And while in the beginning there was one company of milk distribution, now we can see several cooperatives, and I do not need to cite names here, but you only need to go to the market and notice the number of brands of milk that we have. And we must thank God for that, and also thank our government who deployed the efforts during the 60s, the 70s, and 80s to have this available in Morocco. Now, the problem lies with these three crops in this orange area, for which we are not really sufficient. For cereals, for example, in 2008, the food coverage was about 60%. And the target for 2020 is about 90 if we can reach it. And now we will see that we have constraints to that problem. And the same thing is valid for the sugar. We only can increase from 40 to 50. Why? Because the sugar crops, they require lots of water. And we cannot imagine with climate change and drought, recurrent drought, we will not be increasing the surface area crop to sugar beet and sugar cane. And the same thing is valid for table oils. Over here, we can make some effort growing sunflower, safflower, and canola. That's the reason why we can jump from 20 to 40. But again, those crops have some problems that prevent their extension and their expansion throughout Morocco. So let's, if we take a look at the countries, maybe this is a little bit old data, 4 years ago or so, but it depicts the reality between the 10 wheat exporters in Morocco, in the world, the EU countries, mainly France, Russia, Canada, USA, Ukraine, Australia, Argentina, Kazakhstan, and Turkey. And on the other side, we have the 10 wheat importers, and you can find Egypt. Egypt is at the top, followed by Indonesia, Algeria, EU, Brazil, Japan, Iran, Thailand. Morocco is not bad. It's here, it's not, but it's there on the list before Mexico. And the economists say that Morocco is a net importer of wheat, and they are right. As an agronomist, I confirm that, and we will see why. Okay, the uses of wheat in Morocco, we use wheat for all the different types of bread that you can see on markets, but I'd like to draw your attention to this dish, to the couscous, our couscous dish. And basically, our food system reflects our agriculture. Notice, please, with me, that the half of this dish is full with the wheat, the semolina. and the rest of it with vegetables, carrots, zucchini, food legumes, chickpeas, and other things, some potatoes, some cauliflower maybe, and we have some meat, just some meat. You do not need much meat to make a tasty couscous. And that's exactly reflects, to me, that exactly reflects our agriculture. Half of our land is cropped to cereals. And then we complement with the other crops, and some, of course, some land is devoted to ranch for sheep herding and animal herding in the mountains to produce the red meat. And fortunately for us, there is the poultry industry that saves us also. So this is it. Our couscous reflects our agriculture. Our national dishes reflect our agriculture, and the same should be for other food systems in Africa. The ones that are dominated by cassava, the other ones by rice, by maize, and so on and so forth. So you just go and look at the food habits of the people and guess what their agriculture is. And if you need to move toward the food self-sufficiency, you have to address agriculture at the base. You have to address the crops that compose the national dish of the country. Regarding Morocco, each Moroccan citizen needs from 200 kilos to 220 kilos per person per year. These are the official statistics. If you multiply that by the number of millions of inhabitants in Morocco, 35 by 2 quintals, that is 70 million quintals. Okay, this figure by itself is a magical figure. It is a magical figure because it is used in the national budget of our Ministry of Finance to bid on the economic growth in every year. Basically, when establishing the Moroccan budget, the Moroccan law, the Moroccan finance law, they take into consideration the cereal production, and there is another factor that is external, which is the price of oil barrel, the oil. So these are two parameters that are so important for the Moroccan budget to deploy the resources to other sectors. So when talking about growing cereals in Morocco, the first constraint is rainfall, okay? And the second constraint in my eyes are production practices, including soil tillage, use of improved and treated seed, fertilization, let's remember the 4R and the fractioning, the seedbed preparation and mechanization, weed and disease control. And I used to think that funding was a problem maybe in the 70s and 80s, but now when I talk to the farmer, they tell me funding is not a problem anymore. So our problem is here, the rainfall. When we get the rain, we get good cereal production. When we get no rain, no cereal production, as was the case this year. And the second thing, when the rain is here, the second constraint are here, they lie here, their production practices. And I will tackle today the disease problem, the diseases, the weed diseases, and the IDM, the integrated disease management. And by tackling this subject, I would like to share with you my stories and the stories and lessons that I have learned during the last 30 years in Morocco, interacting with farmers and extension agents, hoping to inspire some young African researchers working either on wheat or on other crops in order to enhance food production in Africa. I will tell my story about wheat, of course, because I have spent my life learning that. So I'd like to share it with my friends and colleagues from Africa, and maybe that will help them extrapolate and get inspired to develop the same systems, the same approach with their crops in their different countries. When talking about fungal diseases, as if you consult a plant pathology book, they'll tell you that we have about 8,000 fungal species, And for each crop, we have about 10 diseases caused by fungi. Yeah, you multiply that and you come up with a huge dictionary of plant diseases. And in this matter, I would like, my approach is this. This is the first principle. When you talk to the farmers, you need to simplify your message. You need to simplify your message, summarize your ideas and thoughts, and put yourself in place of the farmer, what he will be able to understand and what not. So for the sake of transmitting my message to the farmers, I have divided the weed diseases in 3 categories. The ones that are soil-borne, caused by fungi inhabiting the soil that can attack the roots. And you see when plants get attacked, when the roots are attacked, the crop may die. The second category is composed of the pathogens that are seed-borne. They either survive on the seed coat or in the brush. You see the brush, the hair, or inside the kernel. Inside the kernel, like for example, here is an embryo, a wheat embryo with the minute mycelium, dark mycelium, colonizing the embryo over here. So we have 2 types of seed-borne pathogens: the ones that are carried on the seed coat, and the ones that penetrate the embryo, waiting for the germ to resume its life. And then the third category, maybe this is the most important category, the airborne diseases that are caused by pathogens that are airborne, simply. And the best example of that are rusts. And in the 60s, we had also problems with septoria, And maybe I would say that septoria was the disease problem that brought the attention of the Moroccan government to develop and to train plant pathologists, whatever. So I was lucky, and I thank God for the opportunity that was given to me at that time in the 70s to go to the US to learn about plant pathology, and especially cereal pathology. That's what Morocco needed at that time. And some of my colleagues went to Denmark. Dr. Abdurrahman Al-Yamani was now working for OCP at La'youn, and others. So if we go, let me tackle the soil-borne diseases. Soil-borne diseases are caused by fungi inhabiting the soil, okay? And they can attack your coleoptile and kill it. Sorry. They can attack your coleoptile and kill it. And they cause by that the rotting of the roots or the culms or the base of the stems. Over here we have the Fusarium root rot caused by Fusarium roseum, and you can see the pink color, the pink color over here, indicative of the fructification of the fungus on the wheat stem. And this is a peculiar fungus because even though it inhabits the soil, it can produce its spores above ground, and those spores can go and infect spikes, and make them diseased and give you seeds like this with the fungus, Fusarium roseum, attacking them over here. Now, if you destroy the roots of such plants, you will get empty heads, white heads. So Fusarium symptoms are either white heads like this because the plants had their roots destroyed and could not feed correctly, or because the fungus has invaded the spikes and killed the spike in an early stage. So on these petri dishes, we have isolated these fungi already in the 80s, and that has promoted research on these root rot pathogen by a number of national researchers in Morocco, and that's how we have advanced. Yeah, careful observation, and also the use. The use of manpower of our graduate students who do research and investigate the situations like that, who made it possible for us to discover this dangerous disease in the area of Meknes. Okay, so now with this type of soil-borne pathogens, there is only one practice, one control method, that is crop rotation. Crop rotation is the most effective control method against the root rot pathogen. And when we talk about wheat, we would like to install it or to sow it after crops like potatoes or onions or other horticultural crops. Why? Because wheat can benefit from residual irrigation water. Usually these crops are irrigated, and wheat can benefit from residual irrigation water. And also, wheat can benefit from residual fertilizers because these crops, horticultural crops, are heavily fertilized by potassium, nitrogen, phosphorus, and some of that still keeps in the soil, stays in the soil, and the wheat crop is happy to use it after horticultural crops. The other thing that we should not forget is that horticultural crops usually have a weed-free soil, because usually the people, they weed their crops very carefully, and the wheat crops has an ideal soil that does not contain weeds. And of course, no diseases, because the diseases of wheat are specific to wheat, and that's the reason why we practice crop rotation. Crop rotation by itself is very beneficial in terms of nitrogen fertilizer. Over here we have the same wheat variety grown on after chickpea and after wheat, and you can see the wheat growing after food legume is healthier than the one growing after wheat. Crop rotation is also important when we practice the no-till. The no-till, that means no plowing, that's it. Tilling the soil means plowing and working up the soil, No-till is a system that allows you to plant your crop without even working up the soil. So and crop rotation is recommended in this system. If you crop wheat over wheat after wheat, it's very dangerous, because some of those fungi that are surviving on the wheat straw over here, like the tan spot caused by Peronophora tuchisauropentis, it can jump from here to the leaves, to the green leaves, and it can cause all these lesions over here on the young crops. And your crop is handicapped from the start. And that's the reason why we need crop rotation also with the no-till system, called known in French by le semi-direct. That's very important. Okay, crop rotation also over here, it shows you how this food legume is grown in a clean environment after the wheat, because the diseases are different. The diseases that attack wheat are different from those that attack these legumes. This could be soybean, could be maybe soybean over here in America. And I would like to conclude this first section by leaving a home message with you. Crop rotation is recommended when the pathogen is soil-borne or survives in crop residue, as you have seen in the slides. The pathogen is host-specific. If the pathogen is not host-specific, the crop rotation will be of no use. And the third rule that we have to respect is that the pathogen structures or survival structures should be short-lived in the soil, less than 1 year. If you have a pathogen that survives in the soil for more than 1 year, then your crop rotation will not work. And the fourth truth is that crop rotation works only for annual crops. You cannot apply it for perennial crops like orchards and trees and the like. Now let's move to the second category of pathogens attacking the wheat, the seed-borne diseases that can be located, as I said, either on the seed coat, in the brush, in the hairbrush over here, in the pericarp, or inside the embryo, like is the case in the loose mat and fusarium. Septoria tends to be located over here and fusarium, and maybe some other diseases, but you can see either the teguments, the integuments, or the embryo, or the seed hair. Okay. Examples of the seed-borne diseases are the wheat bunt, or stinking smut, la carie in French, and over here we have the spike infected with wheat bunt, and we can see it. And the other characteristic of the wheat bunt is that it gives us a bad odor, a bad smell, similar to the rotten fish. So when a good pathologist can only walk through a field and smell whether there is wheat bunt there or not. As simple as that. So, and we have the loose smut. Obviously, it is loose because it has degraded all the ulms and the envelopes, the seed envelopes, and it goes free. Yes, it is not that free, because if it has destroyed these spikes, the spores fly from these infected spikes to the healthy spikes, and they land on the stamina, and they infect the ovary and the stigma, and that's how the fungus get to the embryo and harbors itself in the embryo, waiting for the germ to resume its life in the next season, and it grows with it. And that's we do not see, we have no mean by diagnosing that these grain will be infected or not, unless we run a laboratory analysis that will tell us what is the percentage of embryos that are infected by the fungal mycelium. So that's another aspect of the mastery of the knowledge about your diseases. You have to know very well your diseases, their biology and their ecology, in order to be able to say, this is my control method and how I will go about it, how this method will integrate into the whole system, and how I'm going to convey the message to the farmer. One other smut, that is the corn smut of maize, Eustylago maidis, and you can see it can distort the spikes of the corn, and practically this spike has no production. I was told, and maybe in the literature recounts that these fungus is being eaten like a mushroom in some parts of the world. Well, that could be, that's good, but I don't know, I would not eat it. So for this second category of fungi and pathogen, the best control methods is to treat the seed by effective fungicides. And you have to choose carefully your fungicide, because, as I said, we want that fungicide to destroy the pathogens on the surface or in the seed coat, or we want the fungicide to penetrate to the embryo and kill the fungal mycelium in the embryo. And that's where the scientific knowledge comes in. We have to know the fungicides that are available, their physiology, how they penetrate in the plant tissue, how they penetrate in the embryos and the seed coat, in order to make the right choice for our seed treatment, be it in North Africa or East Africa, and even in South Africa. That's important. The other thing I want to mention is that it is important to treat the seed just before planting, because in some countries where farmers have no scientific knowledge, they have consumed in the 70s and 80s seeds that was treated by fungicides, and it was a catastrophe. Many fatalities among humans and among animals who ate the treated grain. And at that time, unfortunately, the fungicides that were used were organomercurial fungicides who were very toxic. Thanks to God, present-day fungicides are not that toxic, but we must pay attention and take all the care to treat the seed just before planting so that we allow maximum effectiveness for these fungicides exactly when the plants needs them. That means during emergence. And if we can use systemic fungicides, it would be best because they will penetrate in the germinating kernel and they would be carried into the coleoptile and into the young plantlets, and that way they can protect the early stages of the wheat plant. Okay, some commercial names, I do not need to expose them here. And I would like to talk about this. When I went to the my friends, the farmers at Hadcourt, I have lectured to them about these concepts, and I have stirred interest among them, the interest about the seed treatment. So one young farmer who is business-minded exactly, went and convinced a company to bring a small seed treatment unit that is mobile, that you can draw with a tractor and you can take to the farm, and you can treat where the farmer can treat his seed on his farm. So it's very important. It is smart. It was smart, very smart on his side. And that's the reason why I recommend that we researchers, when we talk to farmers, we have to spot leaders such as this person who could talk some French, some other languages, who is business-minded, and who can develop the business of seed treatment in the countryside, in the farms, in Africa. And that is an excellent thing to keep, the best lesson to keep in mind for our African colleagues, both researchers and extension agents, as well as farmers. See over here, they put the seed over here, and the machine get you over here. The machine, the advantage of this machine is that it can it cleans the seed, even with seeds as dirty as this one. It cleans it before it treats it. And it treats only the category that has been calibrated and clean, only the weights, the kernels with higher weights that go through a screen, through a sieve that is treated. And that way we have the good quality seed that is treated for the next season. And that is the right intelligence that we should spot among farmers in order to make them accept this technology that is excellent, that is cheap, and that is simple to use at the farm level, and it saves money, it saves time. You do not have to go to the company. Yes, some people tell me that, well, we have a national company, you are creating competition. I say, well, these farmers do not have the means to purchase treated seeds, you see. And if we can help them treat their own seed, we are at gain. We are gaining. We are helping the farmer gain the seed. We are helping the rural people treat their seed on the spot, and it's just convenient. Okay, the young man is the man over here, and you can see farmers from here around, and you can see some young people around here. These are students of the National School of Agriculture, of the section of the plant protection section. I have brought them to see, to take a look, to study this workshop of seed treatment. The young man has a phytosanitary shop behind the machine, and his neighbor has a shop for fertilizer distribution. You see the integration of all this business is this must inspire our youth who are studying agricultural sciences. That's how they can help the farmers, by facilitating the business, by facilitating the technology transfer from the scientist to the farmer. So it's very important that every time I go to the farmer, I take with me the students so they can learn from the real life practice. That's the real life learning experience. So if I may draw a conclusion from this second part, is that seed treatments can be used to reduce yield losses from seed-borne diseases, especially in smallholder farms in remote areas in various regions of Africa. So if we cannot do any other thing, we can treat the seed at least. And the seed treatments are available worldwide, and African farmers must take advantage of the benefits of this technology. I mean, it's there. And the seed treatments are affordable. They are not as expensive as one might think. And they have a sure return on investment. And this is the reason why I recommend to governments to generalize them among their farmer populations, because we should make seed treatment as a law in smallholder farmers, in order to clean up the seed from all those pathogens that are carried by the seed. So the technology, however, requires training farmers and young entrepreneurs to take the lead at the local level. We as researchers, sometimes we make experiments, we recommend easily, and we read books and we recommend to farmers. Well, that's good. Recommending is good, but doing it in front of the farmer is even better, or finding leaders who could do it for you and convey the message to the farmer more effectively and efficiently is even a good deal. And that's why I recommend, I motivate and incite, and I encourage our young researchers to go and work with the farmers and see what they can learn from them, and whether they can find good partners to transfer their knowledge to the whole population of African farmers. Now, the third category is of airborne diseases. It's a myriad. It's a huge number of diseases. Let me cite only the ones that are predominant on wheat in Morocco. Septoria used to be a common disease during the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And maybe our breeders have done a good job, such a good job, introducing resistance to Septoria. And over here, I'd like to thank them and recognize the plant breeders of the National Research Institute, INRA. I am really proud of them, because they have produced a number of genotypes that were resistant to the benefit of the Moroccan farmers. However, in doing so, maybe they have overlooked the breeding for resistance to the yellow rust, and that's the reason. The reason is clear. The yellow rust was not a disease in the 70s and 80s. It was not a disease in Morocco. It is only a disease that have become prevalent in the 21st century, in the past 20 years. And because our varieties do not have resistant genes, the yellow rust has spread just like fire in the woods. Of course, the leaf rust has been there for centuries and even 1,000 years, and it's still here. But we have some resistant varieties, some resistant genes, and the tan spot, of which we have become aware during the 80s and 90s, and now we count it among the most important diseases. And the stem rust. The stem rust, yes, was occurring in Morocco in the late 70s, especially on the late maturing varieties. Now we cannot find it just because the breeders have made the life cycle of the wheat shorter in order to escape the drought at the end of the growing season. By the same token, they have made the wheat varieties escape the stem rust disease. Powdery mildew is a minor disease on wheat, but it's a major disease on barley. So I'd like to draw the attention to the UG99 strain that has occurred in Uganda in 1999. Thus, its name UG99, Uganda 99. It's a strain of stem rust that has occurred through mutation, and it has definitely destroyed the wheat. In Uganda, in Kenya, it's still a major disease. And because of the westerly winds, the spores are being carried eastward. At least that's how I explained it. It goes now, it has gone to Iran, and it continues its way. Maybe it will reach the America from the other side. Let's hope that it will not, we will escape to it, or let's hope that our colleagues, plant breeders and pathologists will find the appropriate resistant genes for these wheat producing areas. Now, back again to the yellow rust. Wheat stripe rust destroyed 40% of the wheat crop in West Asia in 2010, according to ICARDA authorities. So that's another plague, that's another pest, that's another important disease of wheat, not only in Morocco, but worldwide. And a paper is, I have mentioned a paper by one of our graduate students who did a good review. It's not the only one paper that you will find on stripe rust, but you will find plenty. But I'm just for the sake of sharing information, it's at the end of this presentation. Similar losses have been occurring throughout North Africa during the past 20 years. See the review by Humphrey et al. And I think you will get a feel about how important the yellow rust is for the wheat production, not only in North Africa, but also in other parts of Africa and in the whole world. Now, when we're talking about yellow rust, it's a rust with a very complex life cycle. It completes half of its life cycle on wheat. It starts here, it infects the wheat, and produces its symptoms as strite, hence the name of it. And then the fungus, when the fungus matures, it produces these black pustules, known as tilia, which harbor teliospore, which go and germinate and produces basidiospore that will infect another host. So half of its life is on the wheat, and half of its life is another host, an alternate host, called the beriberi, the Berberis spp, the Berberis vulgaris, or Berberis hispanica. And it's amazing. I was teaching the plant pathology course and always mentioning the name of Berberis vulgaris for 30 years. And I've never seen such a plant. That tells you how something about the profession of lecturers and professors. They are good at repeating truths that they have never seen. But fortunately for me, in 2017, I was lucky, and one of the professors from the University of Minnesota, Eugene, came over here to Morocco and called me and said, Mohammed, why don't you join us? And we'd like to survey to take a survey for the Berberis vulgaris, or the Berberis hispanica in Morocco. So we went with him. It's a plant that grows above 1,000 meters of altitude, and it's a bush in the forest. Well, you will tell me in the forest it has no impact on the wheat. Well, that's good, but when you find a bush like this, isolated close to a wheat field, these bushes that they will inoculate the wheat field in the spring, in the April, during the March, April, May period, the acidiospores or asiospores, that will be produced on the bush will be carried away by the air, by air streams, and they will land in wheat fields over here and wherever they land. So over here, it makes sense. We have the berberry and we have the wheat field. So contagion and transmission is easy and can be imaginable. This is a close-up of the berberry plant. It's a spiny plant, and it is the alternate host of the Puccinias, many of the Puccinias, but especially the yellow rust. So we do not have to blame, as we used to do toward the end of the 20th century, that the uridospores came from Europe, from the Netherlands and Western Europe. Now we have, maybe they have come in the beginning, and once the disease has gotten established in Morocco, now it has found the alternate host and it is thriving in our country. And that's the reason why we will see yellow rust after yellow rust every year in Morocco. Every year, we will not miss. Every year. And that's the reason why we have to think a way of protecting our wheat crop. Okay, that's a view of the scenery of the Middle Atlas. On the road to Emil Schil, you can see bushes of the berberis along the hedges, and it's very common. And you can see over here, beautiful landscape, but with berberry. And of course, we went up to Emil Schil, and this gives you a chance to see the countryside in which we have driven at our own risks. For example, you have a road where that can only take one vehicle at once, in one sense. Well, fortunately, they were making the road at that time. Very good. So now we may ask a very pertinent question. Do all these diseases develop together at one place? The answer is no. Fortunately for us, the disease only develops when you have a susceptible host and you have the plant pathogen present, and together present in a very conducive environment. That's how you can get disease. And this is known as the disease triangle in plant pathology and plant epidemiology. So if I may recommend, there is an urgent need to develop the science of plant disease epidemiology in African universities to cope with quantitative aspects and disease assessment and reporting for the major crops. We need to communicate. We need to exchange information. And the reason and the best way to do that is to train specialists in the area so that we have regular reports from different countries, different ecosystems on the plant disease epidemics that are developing in those ecosystems, agrosystems. The first thing that we have to teach the farmers is scouting, disease scouting. That means you have to go out and look out for the disease. You have to spot the emergence, the onset of the disease. You have to catch the disease before it flies, before it flies, yes. And over here, I'm with my friends from the farmers from Hadcourt. You can see all walks of life, wealthy and less wealthy. And this is their leader, young leader, who is the merchant of the agricultural inputs and also their advisor. And he helps them with the marketing too. So we need entrepreneurs like him in different rural Africa to cope, to convey the progress, the scientific and technological progress to the plain farmers and make it acceptable to the farmer. And that's the reason why I urge the researchers to work down to earth with the farmers, especially with their leaders and their extension agents. Over here, there's the man, the head of the extension center is, and all the other farmers. This is a politician. This is a politician. This is a school instructor. And this is a farmer, period. So you have to work with all these people So this is really the farm school, the farm field schools, the farm field schools. You go to the farm with the farmers, you inspect their farm, and you teach them on the spot, and you raise their awareness of the threats that exist there to their crops. And sometimes you have to be regular in your meetings with them in the farmer field school. You have, here I was talking about how do you diagnose in the different diseases during the maturity stage, and what cautions we must undertake in order to for the previous actions and stages in our itinerary in the farming process. So again, over here you can see various types of phenotypes. This one is a lawyer, maybe, you see, and they come, they all the time they respect, and they respect the farmer field schools. And I never had below 10 farmers listening to me. And this was my best reward, is to convey my knowledge directly to the farmer, and improve their knowledge. That's how we can improve their livelihood, by helping them grasp the scientific and technological concepts so that they can make they can make them work to their benefits. Sometimes you have to lecture inside the extension center. And of course, basically you have to do it in their own language. Over here, I'm giving a chronology of occurrence of diseases. And over here, there's still some French words, but I'm at least indicating the title of my slide in Arabic, and over here in Arabic. So the point that I want to stress is to my African colleagues, researchers, extension agents, you have to speak the language of the local farmer, and you have to simplify your scientific concept in order to make it acceptable to them so they can retain it, and so that it becomes a habit for them with no additional effort. And it calls upon special skills or communication skills. And that's the reason why I underscore that all our engineers should have good communication skills in order to be able to communicate with the farmers that they will be working with. Okay, how do you control these epidemics of foliar diseases? These are the main diseases of wheat. Of course, the best way is to use resistant varieties. And we all know the theory: monogenic, oligogenic, polygenic resistance. There is no time for me over here to explain all this. But this is a language known to the breeders and the plant pathologists alike. And other techniques is that they use the gene pyramiding. That means they keep putting resistant genes in the same genotype by crossing and back crossing and so on and so forth. And that way they do what they call the gene stacking. The gene stacking, you pile up the genes of resistance in the genotypes that are grown in the fields by the farmers. The most popular varieties, that's where you need to stack your genes. And if you have several varieties with several genes, you can deploy them over large areas. If you know that the fungus has different races in different agrosystems, then you can deploy the pertinent gene in the area where the predominant race is. Unfortunately, plant pathogens are shifty enemies. This phrase comes from Professor Erwin Steekman, the man considered to be the father of plant pathology at the University of Minnesota. He studied the stem rust disease the black stem rust, as they used to call it. And of course, they have used resistant genes, and they have noticed that stem rust kept on coming back. They have destroyed the berberis, and the stem rust kept on coming back. And because stem rust kept on coming back, it has just destroyed the genes, the resistant genes. It has broken down the resistant genes that were stacked in the genotypes, and that's the reason why he came up with these two words, shifty enemies. Plant pathogens, they produce a number of small spores, millions and millions of spores. If we apply the natural law of mutation of 1 in a million, 10 to the power minus 6, obviously we'll have all the time mutations among these fungi. And obviously those mutations, the ones that can survive and infect the wheat crop, will be there for decades. And that's the problem. We have to change quickly. That's the reason why the plant breeders and plant pathologists alike have hard time coping with the evolution of the fungi. They must work faster than those fungi, work faster than those plant pathogens. And that's the reason why usually the life duration of a variety can be from 4 to 5 years, and you have to change. So the plant breeders must be working at a pace to produce at least few varieties during a 4 or 5 year time period. So of course, if they can produce more, that's good for the farmers. If they can produce 2 or 3 for these 5 year period, that's also fine. If not, then we'll have to use other means. And for Africa, I favor the theory. I'm among the advocates of the multi-line varieties or the genotype mixture varieties, which means instead of introducing sophisticated varieties from Europe and America, we have to look up into our endogenous population, endogenous crops, and select lines that can make up varieties, but we must take the care that those lines selected must harbor different genotypes, even if when they look alike. We must cultivate mixtures in our field, and to my eye, this concept is very important because it will help African farmers cope with the pathogen problem as well as with the climate change. So when you have an abiotic stress, you have some components of your population of your crop will ultimately die off, but others will tolerate the stress. And that's the reason why I am in favor of these multi-line varieties or genotype mixture. And this concept was not accepted in Europe in the last century, not the last century, the last few decades, just because the industry wanted pure line varieties, because the industry had special need about bread making industry, malting industry, and the other type of industry, spaghetti, pasta, crackers, and what have you. They like to have pure line varieties, and the weak point of the pure line varieties is a narrow genetic base that makes it easy for the fungi to develop and destroy them. That's the reason why I'm preaching to use mixture of genotypes in Africa, because we, after all, cultivate wheat and other crops for food, for local food, for farmer subsistence. We are still working not for the industry, especially for cash crops, but for the wheat and maize. Well, maize is another story, because if you use the the local seed, it might not be a hybrid, but for maize, you may take advantage of that hybrid vigor. And so my recommendation is that African researchers should make their own hybrids and make their own industry to be independent. And that is what will make Africa autonomous and independent. It's a matter of pride. It's a matter of dignity. We must be able, we as scientists, we must be able to bring some progress to our farmers using the sound scientific knowledge, but applied in the African context. Okay? This is about genotype management, but fortunately for us, we have also our friends of the chemical industry who have produced several fungicides that are suited to treat the wheat in the field. So given the importance of the wheat, the world wheat market, as I have shown on the first slide, chemical companies have invested billions of dollars in developing various formulations that are distributed successfully around the world to protect wheat. This is, right now, this is the big market, the biggest market for the fungicide industry, just because the acreage of the world, of the wheat in the world is just huge. And they make money of that, and that does not bother me at all, as long as they bring fungicides that are useful for the farmer. We must not look at these pesticides as, of course they are poisonous. We do not have to drink them in a cup of tea. They are meant as inputs to be applied on the crops to protect the crops from the threats of the fungi. That's how we should look at them. We must thank God that the chemical industry is there to produce such effective chemicals, and we only can choose the chemicals that are profitable to our farmers and that are the least harmful to their health and to their environment and livelihood. If you are an extension agent or a university professor, you must also take time to explain to the farmers the mode of actions of these fungicides, how they work, so that they get a feel. Even though they have not been to school or universities, they are smart enough to get the message, because it concerns its own life, its agriculture, its food production. So in this table, I'm presenting just a simplified picture of the mode of action of fungicides. Over here, I'm depicting two main families: the ones that attack the structure of the fungus, the inhibitors of this is French, inhibitor de biosynthèse d'ergosterol, or the ergosterol biosynthesis inhibitors. They inhibit the biosterols that form the membrane of the fungus cell. Okay? If the fungal cell cannot form its own membrane, then it will die, it will not grow. And this is the peculiarity, this is the mode of actions of the fungicide termed as the triazoles. The triazoles. I'm sorry, my battery, I have to plug in my computer. Just 1 second. Okay, we all depend on technological progress. So the second family of fungicides are the ones that inhibit respiration, such as strobilurins. And obviously, fungicides are for plants and fungi, like antibiotics to infectious disease in humans. You must alternate the active ingredients with different mode of action, so if you want your control method to be efficient. And that's the reason why the industry usually mixes the two types of active ingredients, like for example, 1-triazole and strobilurin, so that you get a final mixture that will inhibit the biosynthesis of the sterols and respiration. So that way you minimize the chance of your fungus escaping from the control. And you minimize also the chances of your fungus to produce mutants that are resistant to fungicide. And the same thing, so on and so forth. The only thing is that the message that I want to leave with the farmers is that they must alternate active ingredients with different modes of action. And that they have grabbed now. And I was very satisfied in the area in the northwest region of Morocco, where I have worked with those farmers. Now they know it. They know that they need to alternate their fungicide in order to get the best deal. Now, when to treat, that's the problem. Again, over here, you must, over here, the field experience is of paramount importance. And from working and looking at the literature and observing the field, I'm giving this picture to the farmers. Powdery mildew, even, of course, I do that in Arabic. Powdery mildew comes first, then septoria and yellow rust, then leaf rust and sunspot, then Fusarium head blight at the end. While, remember, this fungus can destroy the roots and can also infect the spikes. It is called the Fusarium head blight. And there is plenty of literature on this fungus in America and elsewhere. This is very important, and this led me to propose and recommend this spray program for Moroccan farmers in the northwest of Morocco, basically in the area of the Gharb region, assuming a 3 to 4 week persistence of action of the fungicide. Fortunately, our friends of the chemical industry, they made these fungicide, or they have selected these fungicide as to their ability of persistence of action in the wheat crop. Basically, they are of 4 weeks, maybe 5. Based on this knowledge, I used to recommend to the farmers, and I still do it, I still recommend to the farmers that they apply a first treatment, a first spray, when they observe the first node of the wheat, That is, that it coincides in northwest Morocco with February 15 to February 25. We have a lag period. We are lucky with cereal diseases. We have a lag period. You have some leeway, but not too long. You should not wait too long, because these fungicides, they have 1 month persistence. So if I do this and I count 1 month and I recommend then the second spray, basically at the boot stage or the flag leaf stage. Flag leaf is when the last leaf is out, the flag leaf. This is the flag leaf. Boot stage, when the spike is still in its envelope. So by applying this, I have a protection of 4 weeks this way. And if I apply this, I have protection of 4 weeks like over here, so as to protect the spike from the development of fungi on it, as well as on the leaves that feeds it. Because the leaves, the last flag leaf, is very important to the filling of the spike. It is the leaf that contributes about 40% to the grain filling in the spike. So logically, it does not require rocket science. It just calls for basic, sound scientific concepts to be applied related to the observation in the real context. When recommending fungicide sprays to the farmers, you must provide the farmers with some information, notably the cost of each action. That's very important. We must provide farmers with useful cost information so they can decide how much money do they want to spend. Of course, we make them aware that the strength of their fungicide is based on the number, on the grammage, on the number of grams of active ingredients, and especially when you have two active ingredients with high grammage, it's very important. And you go to whatever fungicide, 500, 520, you have 100 of trifloxystrobin and tebuconazole. That means almost 300. See, this one is close, but it's different molecules. See? And this one is just, it is the cheapest, has only this grammage. So this is the type of, these are the type of skills we need to teach the farmers. How to read the labels, how to purchase the right fungicide, at what price. And extension agents need to be aware of this, and they need also to know this information. And professors, university researchers, and researchers, whether to any institution, they must play a role in extending the knowledge to the farmers. Cost of chemicals. Well, if I abide by my rule, cost of one treatment, 500, 2 treatments almost, it takes me to 1,000. So are these profitable? So after having thought a lot about this problem, I thought basically the profitability comes down to the yield level and also to the yield loss. And you have here the amount in dirhams lost for each yield level with varying degree of disease attack, yield loss. And you can see this, for example, I will give an example. For somebody who produces only 5 quintals to the hectare because of some poor soil, lack of irrigation, okay, you apply 5% yield loss and he will be losing 50 dirhams. The same thing over here, 10 quintals, 100 dirhams, and so on and so forth. And of course, the amount of money goes up when the yield loss, the expected yield loss is bigger. So these fungicides, the way I recommend them, are not profitable until we get to these yield levels. And these, starting from 22 tons to the hectare, they are starting being profitable. And with high yield loss, high expected yield loss. So it's an easy demonstration that obviously if you have a yield potential that is very low, you do not need to treat your crop. However, if you are expecting high yield because you are in a fertile soil, because you are in a place where you get enough rainfall above 400 millimeters per growing season, or you have irrigation system and you're expecting yield of 30 tons to the hectares or 40 tons to the hectares, 4 tons to the hectare, sorry. I'm still talking in terms of quintals per hectare. So at the yield loss at stake is very important. And at that time, I recommend the 2 treatment. And let me tell you, there are farmers who went beyond the 2 treatments that I have recommended. Some of them have treated 3 times and 4 times. And among those are the ones who have obtained 9 tons of breadwheat to the hectare. So it has set a record. Maybe now somebody has surpassed that record. But I was just delighted to see this farmer reach this record in the area of Hadcourt. So basically my message is, do not worry about the fungicides if you are in a low input agriculture. If you're applying a low input, if you are practicing a low input agriculture and expecting low yields, then forget about the fungicides. You must look other factors. You must solve other problems that you have in terms of fertilizers, irrigation water. You have to remove the limiting factors that you have here. So in other words, fungicide treatments are to me like an insurance. When you buy a fancy car, you need to have an insurance, and it is in your best interest to have an all risk, an insurance against all risks, because you have a high value good, a high value crop. That's the reason why we need to treat that. Well, it's good to lecture to farmers how to treat the benefits of fungicidal sprays. You have to let them know how to do it. You have to teach them how to use appropriately the spraying equipment, notably how to choose the nozzles, how to calibrate the pumps, how to calibrate the sprayer, and the amount of mixture they are applying to the field. Over here, we are running an exercise, a blank exercise on a courtyard of the extension center. Obviously, you will criticize me because they should have guns and equipment. Yes, I agree. Now they have learned that what is like calibrating, and next time they will be better. You have to teach them how to drive their tractors across the field and the speed that they should maintain to have uniform spray. And also you have to teach them how to use good quality water, because it is important to use clean water with a neutral pH to prepare pesticide tank mixes. When water is alkaline, we must then use a pH corrector to lower the pH, because the pesticides work best when the water is a little bit acid, just below 7. Okay? So avoid using water from ponds or muddy waters from unclean irrigation canals as to not clog the nozzles. So this is serious business. This is, you are administering medicine to the crops that you will be eating. So please treat your crop kindly with clean water, clean pH, and useful pesticides. Obviously, you have to teach them some ecological rules. You have to watch the weather forecast and advise them to not apply any pesticide when wind speed is above 19 kilometers per hour, or when we are expecting rain. Most pesticide require a 3-hour rain-free period after treatment. You should treat before the rain is there, at least 3, 4 hours, 6 hours. It is best, of course, but the minimum hour without rain is 3 hours. And also avoid treating when temperature is below 5 degrees C or above 20 degrees C. And over here you will burn your foliage, and over here you will burn foliage again, because some formulations, they destroy the green tissue when it's too cold. You have to teach the farmers how to protect themselves, and there is no need for me to dwell on this. It's self-explanatory. And you have to teach them also how to wash, how to empty their pesticide residue containers, how to wash them, recuperate the pesticide in the tank that you will be spraying, and then destroy the container so as to avoid that somebody will use it for milk or oil. And this is This is a pamphlet that was made by these organizations, CropLife International and the GIZ plus the Ministry of Agriculture of Morocco, another association. So as to raise awareness among farmers to discard correctly and appropriately the pesticide, the empty pesticide containers, and to not reuse them for milk, oil, or any other liquid. So in conclusion, for this third category of pesticide, foliar diseases are a major threat to wheat production worldwide, not only in Africa. And we must be aware of that. African farmers must be trained to protect their wheat crop. We must teach them how to do it, because it's good to say Africa needs to produce enough food for itself, but it's better if you go and lead by example, lead by action with the farmers of your country, of your territory. You teach them how to do it. In the short term, of course, effective fungicides can be used, but in the long terms, plant breeders and plant pathologists must collaborate to develop resistant varieties to respond to major threats, basically the rust in the various agrosystems in Africa. And this is something that African university may coalesce, may unite, may collaborate on. Then we have to produce, I recommend the creation of teams working on specific crops, their diseases, their specific problems in their territories. The 5 point is that we need in all this business to train young entrepreneurs in disease control at the local levels. As the example of Hadcourt, I'd like to see young farmers and young engineers, young technicians among those graduating from schools and universities of Africa, leading the way, showing the way to the farmers how to do it, because that's serious business. It concerns our food production for our continent. And the 6th point is that UM6P, as our university, a young university with great ambitions, it should work with other African universities, especially the ones belonging to the RUFORUM network, and to train epidemiologists, plant pathologists, and plant breeder to watch plant breeders, epidemiologists to watch disease development in Africa, and also plant breeders to make the appropriate crosses and the genetic improvement, the appropriate genetic improvement in wheat crops and other crops, of course, to cope with the disease problem and also with the pest problem in Africa. So I recommend, this is something that is dear to my heart. I call it the BOULIF's golden triangle. Any researcher should work, of course, the farmer is at the top of the triangle. He's the king, he's the one that we should all be serving. And the researchers from his standpoint is doing research, sound research, pertinent research, addressing the real problems of the farmer. And the researchers should talk to the extension people and their collaborators to convey the scientific message. And both of them, they must go to the farmer hand in hand. They should not go separately. I recommend that the researcher and extension agents should go to the farmer hand in hand to have the most impact of technological adoption and modernize agriculture in Africa. The government is there. The government has a major responsibility, of course, by encouraging farmers through various programs, training programs, subsidies, and laws, and other things. The government has also the responsibility of supporting the extension people. And last but not least, the government must encourage also researchers to tackle the real problems of African agriculture and find the right solution that are adequate for Africa. So this is the final message that I would leave with my colleagues, researchers in Africa, the young researchers who are graduating from our universities, and especially I hope that there are some farmers who are listening to my talk now, and also let's not talk about the extension people. They are part of the system. And anything that can be conveyed to the farmers need to go through the extension people. They are key in this game. In my general conclusion, I have to leave you with these 4 points. There is plenty of scientific knowledge that could be applied to improve the livelihood of African farmers, who are the primary food of producers, the primary food producers for the continent. I must correct some mistakes there, sorry. So, we have brains, we have books, we have experience behind us. We must do whatever necessary to transfer this present knowledge that is useful to the farmers. If we want these farmers to progress and make big progress in producing food for Africa, there is plenty of scientific knowledge to be transferred. The second point is that African governments should pay more attention to training manpower in agricultural sciences, including plant protection for Africa. I'm being chauvinistic, but Africa certainly needs agronomists, plant breeders, food technologists, economists, microeconomists, international economists, etc., etc. So that's the reason why our universities must strive to produce good scientists that stand by the side of the farmer. So the third recommendation is that Africa needs to develop plant breeding programs, sound plant breeding programs that can allow for germ plants management that can be beneficial to the farmer. And these plant breeding and plant resource management programs should be at the forefront of training programs at African universities. And certainly, again, UM6P, Mohammed VI Polytechnic University, this bright, young, growing university has a role to play alongside with its peers, its sister African universities of RUFORUM, as well as other universities from across the world, in Europe, America. All these people can help us, and we can, if we are good friends, we can tap a huge amount of knowledge that can serve our farmers in Africa. So whatever we do in our research, be it in the lab, in the field, we must take it to the farmer. This is what Borlaug said before. That was his last word before dying. Take it to the farmer. Whatever we do, we must take it to the farmer. The real progress is when we take the good knowledge, the good science, the good technology to the farmer to make our farmers benefit from the progress of our knowledge. And that's it. You can see a number of students from the different African countries with some visitors from ICARDA and Cornell universities. And we have my dear colleague, Rashid Lehlali, who is a professor of plant pathology at the National School of Agriculture. This is Dr. Acevedo from Cornell University. The lady over here from ICARDA. This is an alum from Anna McNess, who is presently in Canada, who happened to be here with at that time visiting Morocco. And these are our students from the plant protection section. And they are all, and the man who took the picture is Dr. Filippo Bassi from ICARDA, a very good friend of mine, whom I thank by this occasion for his good collaboration and support when I was working at the National School of Agriculture some years ago. With that, I will thank you for your kind attention and participation, and I will be happy to take any question that you might have.
Thank you, Professor Mohammed BOULIF, for this rich, energetic, and very inspiring kind of presentation, and also for all the thought and the ideas that has been, used and elaborated during your presentation. Some of your colleagues commented on your BOULIF's golden triangle, saying that he likes it. So people are also commenting. So thank you for that. We know that you have a lot to say after 40 years of experience, and also talking with the farmers on the field. There's a lot of lessons to learn from you, see Mohammed BOULIF. So I will not elaborate more because you have really gave very good insights and very rich insights into this problem of disease management in wheat in Africa. So without delaying the questions, I will take the first question. So it's from one of your ex-colleague, Professor Abdullah Abu Drar.
Hello, Professor Abu Drar.
I am waiting for a slide on the correct application spraying of the fungicide, which is the main condition for the effectiveness of the treatment. So
of course. Yes, you will get the slide, no problem. I have my colleague, Professor Abdullah Abu Drar, is a professor, he's an agronomist and a professor of agricultural machinery. And I used to work with him because I have learned so much from him when it comes to agricultural machinery with dealing with the spraying of the pesticide on the field. So I have learned how to calibrate the pressure pump and the boom sprayer and all that. I will give you the slides, no problem, my friend.
Okay. Well, I'm looking for. So another question is from Professor Ghulam Sharqi. He says, what about the virus-induced diseases in cereal, mainly BYDV and BYSNV? Still, they have an economic importance in Morocco. As for 80S and 90S, I don't know all these codes.
80s and 90s. Yes, I know. Yes, this is a good question. Our colleague Ghulam Sharqi has been working on the barley yellow dwarf virus. Yes, this is, I did not omit, yes, this is an omission. The barley yellow dwarf virus, which is a virus that affects barley, causing the yellowing of the leaves, and a virus transmitted by an aphid, used to be a disease, a prevalent disease on wheat and barley alike during the 80s and 90s. And the force of thing is that now the prevalence of the yellow rust and other diseases may have masked the importance of the barley yellow dwarf. But I still think that the barley yellow dwarf is still there in some areas, especially in the mountainous areas. It could be that the global warming have had some effect on the aphids and should be maybe we have less aphids during the warm growing season that prevents the aphids from flying and transmitting the virus.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. So a question from Therese Agnero. Did you notice a reduction in some weed diseases in Morocco due to the use of some nutrients?
Hello, Teresa. How are you? Teresa, I know him. I know her by the name of Teresa Acham. She, by the way, she studied at the same university, the University of Minnesota. She's a virology person. But you're right. There are very interesting subjects in researching plant nutrient management in relation with weed diseases. I don't think I can think of any instance where weed diseases are linked to the use of some nutrients. The only thing that is obvious is that sulfur. When we use sulfur, the wheat crop seems to do better. The sulfur, especially in the area of Meknes. So that's the reason why we recommended that sulfur fertilizer should be applied in the beginning, and it's very important. And sometimes zinc can be a problem, and boron can be a problem. Boron is a disease of Nordic regions. I'm not aware that we have boron deficiency problems in Morocco. It might be that they may be here, but I'm not aware of these conditions.
Okay, we have a question from Professor Michel Ghanem saying, what do you think of the necessary balance between field work and molecular work in our modern day pathologists?
Oh yes, definitely. I definitely belong to the old school. The old school that worked with the botany, where you were required to know all the plant species, the insect by species, the fungi by species and by heart, and that's how you could succeed your exams. Obviously, the science of plant pathology, agronomy, botany, has evolved quite a bit. And with molecular biology developing, it has a different dimension to the whole science, to the whole, to any field of scientific investigation. It's very important. And we should not look at that as a rivalry, but rather as a complementation. Old school pathologists need molecular biologists, and molecular biologists need to be put back on the track by classical biologists. I'm not saying pathologists, classical biologists, because the basic rules of biology and ecology remain the same. If we can complement those, if we can complement our knowledge by detailed and fine knowledge of molecular biology, that would be best. That will be best. So I do not see any, we must have the right balance, and these two profiles must cohabitate, if I may say, or they must go hand in hand, because in present day plant breeding, you must not rely on your phenotyping and your macrobiology. You must go also into the details of the plants and look for the molecules and see what triggers that infection process and how all these processes are functioning. So it's important. It's important. But I'm like that. I come at the end of my career, but I still have to learn from molecular biologists. They are dear to my heart, and I'd like to work with them to produce good results. And that's how you make good soup. Different spices in the same dish.
Okay, thank you, Si Mohammed. So we still have at least 40 to 50 questions for this.
That's good. No problem with me.
So, but we have also to watch the time. So, okay, let's be as quick as possible in when answering, that we can give the chance to everyone to ask questions. Professor Mohammed, if you allow me. So, a question, apart crop rotation, are there any other actions should farmers take before to avoid yellow rust? And how to pass simply the message to small farmer, and the person is thanking you.
Okay, well, thank you for this question. That means my message did not go through correctly. Well, crop rotation has no effect on yellow rust to start with. Yellow rust is among the third category that is airborne. So no matter what your crop rotation is, the yellow rust still will get you there. Crop rotation is only valid with fungi that are inhabiting the soil, that are destroying the roots, the roots and the culms. Yellow rust, no. For yellow rust, you must have the resistant varieties or the fungicides. That's the only thing you can do.
Thank you. A question from Professor Tanji Abbas. He's thanking you for your interesting seminar, and he's asking: Are pathogens changing with climate change?
Well, definitely. Why do we observe stripe rust or yellow rust being prevalent these past years? For some reason, when we were studying plant pathology in the 80s, 90s, we were all the time thinking that stripe rust is limited to the Netherlands for some reason. And I was thinking, even when I was teaching plant pathology at Anna McNass, I was that was in my head that we'll never have stripe rust in Morocco.
Okay, we have a question from Taimi Nawab.
Climate change, definitely the fungus has mutated, has gotten adapted to warm climate, and that's the reason why we will have stripe rust or yellow rust prevailing year after year in Morocco.
Sorry, Professor Mohammed, I started asking.
Okay, no problem, no problem.
So a question from Taimi Nawal. She's thanking you for the presentation. She's asking if integration of crop such as quinoa in arid area crop system could reduce wheat diseases pressure, considering that it belongs to another family.
Yes, definitely. Hello, Nawal. I'm glad that she joined the experimental farm. She's an alumnus of the National School of Agriculture. Yes, of course. Quinoa is an ideal crop that we must insert in our crop rotation systems, because quinoa is a plant belonging to another family than wheat, and it may help reduce the disease pressure in the soils and also the airborne pathogen if the area becomes important. That's the reason why we must encourage the development of quinoa in different regions in Morocco to improve our rotation system.
Thank you. Another question about how Morocco is managing the seed-borne diseases for seeds exported from outside. You mean probably imported from outside. Fungicide treatment could be efficient for all fungal diseases when quarantine pathogens.
Well, this is a compound question, but let me tell a story. When I was studying plant pathology in Rabat, there was not a company such as Sonacos. At that time, we were struggling to make fungicide treatments for the seed a rule for Morocco. And thank God the government has listened to our recommendations. Now, Sonacos is treating the seed very well, and it delivers good seed that is well treated, but that's not enough. Okay? And in countries where you do not have companies that treat the seed, you must teach the farmers how to do it. Okay? Now, quarantine organisms, the Ministry of Agriculture does not allow them in. In order to import seed from outside, you need to have a phytosanitary certificate attesting and certifying that the seed is free of disease. And obviously, that imported seed has to be treated. If not, it will not get into the country.
Thank you, Professor Mohammed. A question from Layla Midrawi. She's thanking you for the presentation, and she's asking, what about the use of plant growth promoting bacteria for biocontrol of wheat fungal diseases in Morocco? Do you have any experience? Morocco has any experience with that?
I'm not aware of, but I'd like to see someday some plant growth promoting bacteria being used in seed treatment to improve the rooting capacity of the cereal crop to cope with the drought, stress, as well as with the fungi that are attacking the roots and the culm of the wheat. But that is a field that needs still to be investigated and pioneered.
Okay. So, question again from Mademoiselle Layla Madrawi. Are they sufficiently aware of the importance of respecting good practices for their safety and that of the consumer and environment? She's talking about the farmer.
She's talking about the
farmer.
About the fungicide?
Yes.
Well, the cereal sector is the sector that has the least risks from pesticide. The reason being is that the number of pesticide and quantity of pesticide that are used in cereal field is small. It is thought that the average farmer invests about or less than 200 dirhams of pesticide in hectare. And most of those pesticides get degraded and usually do not get into the food system through cereals. However, the risk is bigger, far bigger, with the fruits and vegetables that we eat, because they are treated all the time until they are, of course, there are rules. You have to respect the DAR, the délai avant récolte, the delay before harvest. Well, that's good. If you have conscious farmers, they do that. But other farmers who are not unconscious, or then they don't care, that is not respected. And that is a real danger to the consumer. And that's where the government must come in and control the food system, the food chain in the local market in order to protect the local consumer. Why I found it aberrant and not normal that we control all the food that go out of the country and we do not control the food inside the country.
Okay. Thank you, Si Mohammed. We have a question from Mr. Abdullah Hama. He's thanking you for your presentation. And he said, in your opinion, which will be the wheat diseases for which the establishment of a regional early warning system seems easy and for which the data is available? Very interesting question.
It's rust. We know the temperatures and the moisture, the air moisture that are favorable to the yellow rust. We know also how to trap the spores. We know how to sample the air and trap the spores. And we can do it to any region of Morocco. And if you can do it, as Abdullah, for the Gharb, you will be the king. You will be the champion. You'll be the champion. Do it for the Gharb. Do it for our area in Meknes. It's easy. If you have the means, and I know you are working with OCP, if you can convince the Al-Mutmir program to have a battery of weather stations throughout the country, you can warn about the arrival of the stripe in the Sais Plain, in the Gharb Plain, and all the wheat growing areas.
Thank you, BOULIF. So we have a question from Breda Ben Breed, Dr. Breda Ben Breed, saying that are there any good results from the no-till farming, semi-direct, experience in Morocco? Can the system reduce the impact of pathogen?
Oh yes, there are. The no-till system is a philosophy, is an approach, is a system that aims to reduce the fuel bill, destroy less the soil, and be less harmful to the environment. It is one of the techniques recommended to fight climate change by reducing gas emission of greenhouse gases by burning less fuels. That's the major objective of the no-till system. And there are successful experience in the northwest part of Morocco at Hadkourt. One farmer did succeed producing 9 tons to the hectare of wheat using the no-till system. Le semi-direct. It was applied at Hadkourt by one of the farmers who was aware enough, intelligent enough, smart enough to follow our recommendations, but also had enough money. He had the financial means to apply the recommendations. Now, they apply the no-till system at Hadkourt because they found it beneficial. It reduces the fuel bill because it makes you economize and save about 1,000 dirhams per hectare of fuel and machinery. Besides that, you destroy less soil and you conserve the soil. Now, as far as disease, the disease problem is concerned, no, you must avoid succeeding susceptible crops to the same disease. You must avoid growing wheat after wheat. You must avoid growing wheat after maize, after corn, because they harbor the same pathogens. You must avoid doing wheat after barley, or barley after wheat for that matter. Wheat after maize is dangerous because maize is a harbor. It's a harbor for Fusarium graminearum, Gibberella Z. So if you grow wheat after maize, it's a danger.
Okay. So we have a question from Khalil Al-Mujahid, Professor Khalil Al-Mujahid. And breeding in the past focused more on diseases, especially by breeders. Do you think we could have better varieties if plant pathologists and agronomists were part of the process?
I like that. And thank you, Dr. Mujahid. You know, how do you call it? Sharing credit is augmenting credit. Shared credit is augmented credit, which means when we develop something successful, we're all successful. And I encourage multidisciplinary work done by agronomists, plant breeders, plant pathologists. And when in the agronomy chapter, I include all the weed control specialists such as Dr. Abbas.
Okay, so yeah, we have, it's a good transition because we have again a new question from Professor Tanji Abbas saying that does Africa needs to import genetically modified organisms, cereal varieties that have pathogen resistance and other interesting features to boost cereal production? I may add what is the risk? I may add what is the risk of doing so?
Yes, the world is divided on this issue, and Morocco has made it clear that it should not grow GMOs on its land. But whether we eat that or not, that's another question. We control everything. You see. Now, when it comes to GMOs, I'm not extremist. I would take GMO cotton, GMO maize to grow in Africa to increase food production. Why not? I'm not a, how do you call it, but a narrow-minded person. I would like to take advantage of any opportunity to increase food production.
Okay, so we are taking the last question, Si Mohammed BOULIF.
Yes.
And it is from students, I guess. And that also give us a good transition that I will give you the last word to act it for students in terms of conducting research in the area that you have presented. So the question is from Mohammed al-Musaidi, saying, thank you very much, Professor BOULIF. Do you think, sir, that good irrigation practices and new irrigation technologies like the subsurface drip irrigation could help in the management of plant diseases?
Well, of course, obviously, water is life. Water is life. When the plant is well nourished, it resists better. It produces better. Now, the problem is that in the area of Meknes, when we were trying to encourage irrigation in cereal crop, we have noticed one phenomena. When the farmers have got access to water, they prefer to switch to potato or onions or other cash crop. Wheat. So okay. my best deal was to tell them, well, okay, grow your potato, but after the potato, please grow the wheat.
Very good. Okay, so I am just reiterating my request, my question, Professor Mohammed. So in this area of disease management for crops, so there is a lot of research topic that could be undertaken by young researchers like students entering their PhD program and PhD doctoral programs. So where do you think that will be holes to fill or question to answer? Where are the most, crucial parts of this domain of plant protection and disease management, where the students can probably conduct doctoral studies?
The question is directed to me, right?
Yes.
Okay.
This is a general question, and the answer it will be directed to the young researcher, the students.
Yes, yes, that's a quite pertinent question. I believe that a plant protection specialist should be first a good agronomist with a good sense. If you do not know how to grow your crops, you have a logical mind about the production process, then you cannot be a good plant protection specialist. Because the best way to cure a disease is by knowing the nature of the disease and the anatomy of your patient. This is valid even in human medicine. You need to know the human body parts and their functions in order to be able to cope with any disease that attack those parts. That's exactly with the same thing with agriculture. You need to be a good agronomist and with good production processes in your mind to watch for the plant pathologists, the insect pests, the weed pests, how they affect your production, and how best you can move your science, mobilize your knowledge to fight that stress or that obstacle. So in the plant protection section, I would recommend a strong agronomy background, including genetics, including plant breeding, including seed technology, including plant physiology, plant genetics, mathematics. If we tackle the epidemiology, you need to be good in math and statistics and so on and so forth. That's what makes agricultural science challenging and fascinating. Even if you, when you get into the disciplines, you need all these sciences. So when you envisage taking or undertaking advanced studies in plant protection field, you will need to have all these disciplines in your mastery before undertaking any plant protection research program.
Okay, thank you, Si Mohammed, again. Thank you for accepting the invitation and for really taking the time to elaborate on this very interesting topics in disease management and crop protection in Morocco and also in Africa. So again, you are very welcome to come back with a webinar, a new webinar from your choice. So this webinar, again, it's a series of webinars and that you can watch next week. For example, we have a new speaker. But if you haven't watched all this, all the whole part of the talk by Professor Mohammed BOULIF today, don't worry, because we do record this webinar. So after the end of this broadcast, you can still go to the ESAFE UM6P channel, and you will receive the whole recording of this webinar from the beginning. So, and including the question and answer parts. So you can watch it again. It will be there for, we hope, for at least a few weeks. So again, thank you, Si Mohammed, for your talk, for your presentation, for also taking the questions. Really, thank you. So I leave you the last word before I announce the new speaker for next week.
Okay, I encourage the young scientists to strive and improve their knowledge in the various fields, and do not be limited to your specialty and thinking that you have won it all. You need a number of disciplines to back up your own discipline. And may I recall a definition one time in the 80s, an American professor came to Morocco and happened to visit me at the National School of Agriculture in Meknes and asked the same question. He asked me, Dr. BOULIF, what is your definition of a good specialist, your best definition of a good specialist? I told him a good specialist is the one who masters very well the knowledge in their specialty, being a man or a woman, but who has the ability to establish good communication channels with all other specialists. Someone who is good in his field and makes himself understandable to other specialists and even to the plain citizens such as the farmers.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you for having given me this opportunity to speak to the students, to the young researchers, and to other colleagues whom I thank for their participation, active participation to my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. BOULIF, for accepting the invitation, and you are more than welcome to come back with a new topic and to participate in this dissemination of the know-how, the knowledge through our, colleagues and students in Morocco and in the whole African continent. Thank you again. So, okay, so our next speaker on Monday. So Monday, the July the 20th, will be Professor Smulders. I will pass in to Professor Eric Smulders, and he will be talking about strategies to enhance phosphate fertilizer use in the highly weathered soils of Africa. Again, another very interesting topic concerning the soils in Africa. So we are more than welcome to participate. Just watch your emails and watch the ESAFE UM6P channel and watch also YouTube, and we'll find out about this seminar, this webinar. It will be on July the 20th, next week, Monday at 2 p.m. time in Morocco, which is GMT +1. So again, thank you for your participation and for the interaction with the speaker. And we were very delighted to have to provide you with this webinar, and very delighted to have Professor Mohammed BOULIF as a speaker. And we'll give you an appointment for next week with a new speaker. So have a good week and see you very soon.